Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, whenever you may be watching this. Thanks for joining us as we continue our look through the book of Genesis here. We're going to start in chapter 7 today. Now, last week, if you haven't watched it, I encourage you to go back and watch it. But we looked at Noah building the ark, right? And the different measurements for the ark and all that kind of thing. Today, we're going to jump into chapter 7, where we're going to see Noah entering the ark. We may finish chapter 7 today. I don't know. It depends on time and such like that. But that's where we're headed today, right? So God has warned Noah, and Noah has spent the past 100 years building the ark as well as collecting all of the grain and all that kind of stuff, and that his family would need for on the ark, and preaching to the nations about the coming disaster. Futilely, I might add. It was all futile, but still, or futile, right? But still, he does it. And I think that even before we jump into chapter 7, I think that's an important thing for us as believers today, is sometimes it can feel very, very useless to try to preach Jesus to people because they're not listening. They don't want to listen. They don't care. And yet we're still supposed to do it because just as Noah said somebody might be saved from the coming destruction, we have to look at it the same way. Somebody might be saved from the coming destruction. And that's beautiful to me, to preach the gospel and to try to reach people with the truth of Jesus Christ. All right, let's jump in to chapter 7 now of the book of Genesis. Okay? The Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 2 of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Let's stop there after verse 5 and talk about those few things. So it's been roughly a century that Noah has worked without direct word from God. And now God again shows up and speaks because the time has come. In 1 week, the deluge is going to come. Get on the boat, right? So Noah proved himself through his actions. This is a great debate amongst a lot of Christians, the idea of faith versus works, and for salvation. And quite frankly, both play a role. Let me explain what I mean by that. So we know Scripture says in so many places, it is by faith in Jesus Christ that we are saved, right? It has nothing to do with us and our works. Otherwise, it's a uh, downplays what Jesus did, right? So I am by no means saying that your works save you, just as I am by no means saying that Noah's works saved him. However, our works today, just as Noah's works back then, showed his faith, right? James says it in the book of James when he says essentially, listen, I'll show you my faith by my works. Guys, if we are true believers of Jesus, we're going to do what he says to do, right? It's one of the few ways that Jesus gives us to recognize other believers is other people doing what God told them to do. And so, yes, Noah's works did not save him, but it was through his works that he showed his faith and righteousness. So let me tell you this right off the jump here. If you are depending upon your works to get you into heaven, it will not happen. It will not happen. You will get there and he will say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." That's somewhat controversial, especially within a few Christian denominations. But the fact of the matter is that the Bible is abundantly clear on this matter. It is through faith in Jesus and faith in Jesus alone that we get into heaven. But it doesn't stop there. Once you've placed your faith in Jesus, you are supposed to do the right thing. Okay? So Noah's works didn't save him, but it was through his works that he showed his faith and righteousness. Okay? So no, God then says, come, not go into the ark, right? Come into the ark. What he's essentially saying is that God's going to be on the ark with them. God will be there with them. And I think that's beautiful, right? It's very similar to me of Jesus with the disciples when they're on the boat in the Sea of Galilee and the waves are crashing and the storm is raging and Jesus is there with them, right? I know there's a bunch of mini sermons in this, obviously, but rest assured that God is with us in the midst of the storm. God is with us in the midst of the storm. He doesn't ask us to go through it and then leave. He goes through it with us, right? Amen. And then not only did Noah show faith, but his family did as well. At least his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. We know that after the flood, Noah has more kids than those three. And it's probable that before the flood he did, which kind of makes this even sadder, that they willfully chose not to follow after God and follow what Noah was being told to do. Um, um, but some did. His wife, that being Noah's wife, and his children and their wives did not have to believe and go, but they did. And as such, it is through them that all the nations of the world are going to be created. We'll talk about that when we get into Genesis chapter 10 with the table of nations. So then we get into the idea of what does clean mean, right? Take 7 of every clean animal, 2 of every unclean animal. Well, we can look back and go, well, clean obviously means this, no cloven hoof, or, they have to chew the cud, and this, that, and the other thing. If it's in the sea, it has to have fins and scales, right? All that. The fact of the matter is that none of that is around yet, at least to our knowledge. At the very least, the Deuteronomy and Leviticus are not given for a while yet, hundreds of years. And so it's important to note that what we know now, we can't always apply to them. For instance, we look at the passages in like Genesis chapter 3 and say, oh, well, it's talking about Jesus. But the Old Testament authors didn't know that. They know it's talking about the Messiah. So to say, well, they're talking about Jesus there is actually incorrect. They are talking about the Messiah. We know him as Jesus or Yeshua, but they would not have known him as that yet. They would have known him simply as the Messiah. And so, clean to our knowledge now, we have more information. This is the first use of that distinction of clean and unclean animal, um, because the Mosaic law that we read about in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, right, doesn't exist yet. We've already mentioned that. So it's most likely a combination then of a few things. One, those animals that are suitable for domestication, your cattle and horses, things like that, sheep, those sorts of animals. Two, suitable for sacrificial offerings, right? And then three, most likely, they would later then be listed under the Mosaic law, although this distinction is later removed. Acts 10 and 1 Timothy 4 tell us that there is no longer a such thing as a clean and unclean animal because of what Jesus did on the cross. There's no more need for sacrifice and things like that. We can eat pork and stuff like that. But so most likely what happens here is that these animals will later be listed under the Mosaic law as clean and unclean animals, but there wasn't the Mosaic law hadn't been written yet, so we cannot just say, well, that's definitely what that means. Also, we see that um, there are more than just 2 of every kind of animal, right? When we tell the story in kids' church and Sunday school, and what most people know is, well, it's 2 of every kind of animal. It's 2 of every animal. One, it is not 2 of every animal. There's 2 big issues there. It is not 2 of every animal, and it is not 2 of every animal, right? It's 2 of every kind of unclean animal, right? We've mentioned that before, I believe it was last week. He doesn't need to do every kind of dog. He needs to bring 2 dogs, right? So that greatly decreases the number, even though it's still a ton of animals. And 2, it is 7 of every clean animal and the birds. Um, there isn't a real distinction given, although for why it's 7 instead of 2 there. The idea mainly is that Noah would need to make sacrifices when they got off the ark. And so of the 7 of the clean animals allows for him to make sacrifices, but there's still to be plenty of that animal left over to repopulate its population on the post-flood earth. Okay? So God then gives Noah 7 days. 7 days to to finish everything up, right? These 7 days again are most likely for Noah to take care of any last minute prep um, that he needed to take care of before they got on the boat. And Noah, we read in verse 5, Noah did what he had been already doing. That is exactly what God commanded him. Notice Noah's continued obedience without hesitation. Here's something that my dad had to teach me and my 3 siblings, right? And all parents should teach their kids. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. Okay? Delayed obedience is still disobedience, right? That is, if dad says, Sam, go take out the garbage, and I say, okay, and I don't do it for 20, 30 minutes, that is disobedience. If dad says, hey, Sam, sometime today, take out the garbage, well, then I've got all day to do it, right? And as well, if dad says, Sam, go take out the garbage, and I say, okay, can I wait till a commercial break? And he says, yep, then I can wait till that commercial break. If he says no, I got to go up and do it. I got to get up and do it right then, right? We oftentimes think that as long as we obey at some point, it's still obedience, but that's not true. If we are called by our parents, by God, to do something, we must do it immediately. We're going to stop there because this next section we're going to get into is going to take us a while. And I've been trying to keep these videos 15 minutes or a little shorter, give us a little bit more of a palatable intake of it, right? And so we're going to stop there after verse 5. Noah's about to get on the ark, and we're going to see how long he spends on the ark here as we continue on into chapter 7. As always, please like, share, subscribe. If you have a question or a comment or something like that, comment it below, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. And we will see you guys again next Friday for our as we continue to study the book of Genesis chapter 7 here. Thanks, guys. God bless.